The summer sweat from the 3-mile-high ice sheet had turned to a river now. They knew when and where the ice would crack. They had picked a beautiful vantage nook high in the Rocky Mountains. But knowing what is coming doesn't prepare one to see the great flood unleashed. I counted the portals out of which they proceed and wrote down all their outlets, of each individual star by itself, according to their number and their names, their courses, and their positions. Safe as well from the meteorites that began to arc across the sky. Not so safe they hadn't spread to the extremities of the earth to ensure survival, but Enoch had faith. He tucked away his book. They still had a long time before they'd have to pick tribes to follow, but he had a few hundred years of notes already. They all did, now that they were alone. He'd been thinking about his last trip up to Babel, just before the 144 left. Each of their families, unreproduced and ascended away, feels more poignant when you consider that is 12,000 parts out of 12,025 from your shared collective soul. He didn't doubt for a second that it was harder on the ones who left. When you lose something, it drives you nuts. When you lose everything, you just move on. Now the world was moving on and he was ready. But everything seemed so quiet now, he had to talk to himself not to get dizzy. As he watched the display unfold, it occurred to him that the Woolard was undergoing a reversion, and that reversion paralleled the one that led him to bind himself to this course. All who are in heaven know what is share. Enoch hummed to himself as the light show continued. Ah, to end the quest, to no longer feel compelled to explore, discover, or evolve. No need for any candles. He stepped up first to stay behind since he thought there'd be a rush, their loss. He dreamt back to a far-removed era when Earth was still young. Consciousness was a nascent spark in the cosmic panorama. Eve, primordial mother, sculpted the first ripple of existence in the tranquil pool of primordial life. In the realm of the cell, she assumed the mantle of motherhood for each human forms to come, defining herself as the first being to give life as we know it. This advent of humanity was no small task, requiring intuition, instinct, and understanding, yet possessing a voice so silent it could only be heard inside oneself. Driven by the powerful urge to endure, Eve had an innate concern. She pondered over the ephemeral nature of life and the fragility of physical existence. Compelled by this existential premonition, she made a profound choice. Eve, in her meditative state, sensed a world within herself, a microcosm mirroring the macrocosm, yet inextricably unique, hidden in plain sight. Eve, driven by love and hope for humanity's future, she looked within the egg, and she found the mitochondria. The mitochondria were these discrete inner worlds, existing within each cell as a reminder of our symbiotic past, when human life was still ensconced in the aquatic cradle of evolution. Pulsating with vibrant energy, these diminutive powerhouses were conduits feeding the very spark of life. Perplexed by the evanescent existence of physical life, Eve contemplated the paradox of persistence. Just as mortal bodies decay and end, she reasoned, so too should the cognitive self, the perception of I, the essence of consciousness, should follow the same pattern. Yet something whispered in her primordial wisdom that the echo of her enlightenment, her spirit, her energy, had the capacity to survive beyond the corporeal. An unexpected, unintended, a transformation occurred. For one cannot observe without affecting, and the link between her conscious mind and the life force, the soul of her offspring, had become inextricably bound. And now, she had to care about the future. So she taught her husband. These organelles, emulating the celestial bodies in the cellular cosmos, would serve as sacred vessels for her spiritual spark, an eternal lighthouse in the seas of temporal existence. Over millennia, Eve's spiritual essence, encapsulated within cellular mitochondria, has journeyed through descending generations like sacred whisperings in a cosmic game of telephone. It has perceived history unfurl, watching over humanity's evolutionary journey like an eternal silent observer. This creative adaptation of Eve's spiritual continuance is analogous to a melodious symphony, tuned to the rhythm of evolution, holding together the harmony of physical existence and spiritual awakening. A celestial ensemble that used the soul's progression as its score, with each human life a momentous crescendo and every newborn a reverberating echo, inviting the next, the pulsating rhythm of continuation and regeneration. As such, Eve's mitochondrial legacy serves as ancient proof of the balance between continuity and change, interlacing the physical and spiritual dimensions. This intricate dance illustrates how the eternal essence could be transferred to subsequent lives through the vessels of mitochondria representing the evolution of the soul. Each individual thus harmoniously presents an ageless symphony, a testament to our shared origin and the endurance of spiritual consciousness. His memory flashed forward to his oath, to this cycle of existence until all sentient life attains enlightenment. Getting involved with things like that is kind of non-linear. If you already understand what you are thinking about, you probably made the choice long ago. Indeed, if you have the chance to understand what you are thinking about, you've probably already made the decision. His people's predicament was also unexpected in planning and obvious in retrospect. The ascendant ones had too much focus on the elevation of consciousness and intellectual advancement, which, in a drive to shed the impediments of the physical form, resulted in excessively elongated craniums. The downside came in the form of severe complications in childbirth, nature's cruel joke. As such, physical reproduction became challenging, if not impossible. We must embrace the primitive, the rawness of existence, the pain, the joy, the uncertainty. To unlock the potential of man and conjoin our destinies, we must reconnect our origins, to strip away the layers of privilege and power, to become as one, as the light of the sky and the warmth of the earth's embrace. The daughters of man, beautiful in form and heart, shall cradle our children in her bosom, and together we shall light the path to a greater salvation. Every step a prayer, each inch a pilgrimage. Enoch thought back to his first lesson, sitting with his father under the Bodhi tree, reading the textbook of Genesis. The story of Adam and Eve, in its most literal interpretation, encapsulates a basic understanding of human anatomy, setting its stage in the physical realm. We read about Adam, who in an act of creation sacrifices a rib to form Eve. This patriarchal narrative subtly underscores the physical differences between males and females. By virtue of the tale, it paints Eve as a derivative of man, formed from the solitary rib of Adam, inferring a sense of weakness or lesser strength in comparison to her male counterpart. But it is here that our journey of understanding truly begins, digging deeper than the surface and driving the curiosity to understand what lies beneath. As we evolve, intellectually and scientifically, the literal translation of the story propels us to reassess our understanding and question the validity of the narrative. It becomes evident that Eve could not have been made from an actual physical rib of Adam. This dissolution of the literal tale presents an interpretational void, a missing rib that needs to be understood and filled. This is where the essence of negation lies, as it drives us to question and seek answers. The mystery of the missing rib piques the interest within the scientific community, encouraging them to delve into the mystery of our genetic makeup and the mechanisms of sexual differentiation. Where and why the rib is missing forces us to look deeper than the eye can see. This enigma brings us to the reinterpretation stage. Here, modern science unravels this intricate puzzle. The missing rib is no ordinary bone, but a symbol for the unique Y chromosome, a necessary imbalance that allowed life to progress from simplicity to more incredible intricacy through infinite combinations, attaining greater and greater levels of complexity with each generation from then till now. Now, is this apple at the root of all evil? Or does the dance of creation between Adam's Y and Eve's X provide the music of life and existence? A waltz in synchrony and counterpoint, breathing life and transforming understanding of our roots, revolutionizing our perceptions, leading us towards a harmonious coexistence, bringing forth the beauty of existence in understanding of our origins. The Bible is a great source of knowledge. It's a set of blueprints listing triads of objects we can learn from the Torah through Revelations. From the Bible to the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita, through the Book of the Dead and the tales of King Arthur. One logic, 22 patterns, infinite flavors to facilitate our understanding, to prepare our minds for revelations, not constrain our actions. That law was for the lawless. Controversial? Then review the shared female sources of your religious traditions on screen. God only cares about you learning and living by the logic, which I will teach you to understand for yourself. And you can tell all the so-called religious interpreters, intermediaries, go-betweens, and other false idols if you aren't part of the solution. You are part of the problem. For only when faith combines with understanding is the path to God's gifts revealed. Enoch looked up from his lofty vantage point, his heart throbbed with anticipatory fear. The sky, once a boundless expanse of cerulean blue, had transformed into an ominous canopy. The meteor's flaming tail streaked across the heavens, a cosmic harbinger streaking towards Earth. It was the image of Jormungandr, the mythic world serpent he would one day inscribe in the annals of Norse lore, poised at the precipice of Ragnarok's impending doom. The onslaught began, a torrential tempest, a spectacular ballet of fire and ice, a raw spectacle of the universe's unforgiving cruelty and awe-inspiring majesty. The meteor came in at a low angle, like it had just barely been gripped by the Earth's gravity, in a weird fluke event, and looped around several times, wrapping the upper atmosphere in a band of fire. Fire in the sky, encircling the entire world. An image he would not soon forget in any incarnation. And then, with a thunder like God's angriest shout, it exploded. The ice crystals within the meteor, vaporized now and super hot, found every fault line in the planet killer, and it blew into a billion pieces through the mountain's skeletal ridges and into the stilled heart of the world. Enoch and his fellows wrapped scarves around their noses as the fine dust of rare earth metal settled toward the earth. The others urged him to come inside. Where would the shards fall? He told them God either wanted him to see or not, so they all stayed. The explosion had changed the course of the main chunk, twisting its path northward as it passed overhead and careened into the massive ice sheet. Flames danced over the celestial serpent scales, their fierce glow reflected in the river's roiling current that surged beneath the ice. Chaos unraveled. The ice roared as it splintered, releasing the pent-up waters unchained. Enoch could scarce comprehend the unfathomable force of nature's wrath. The torrent of water grew, a massive wave of unstoppable fury that ripped through the land, reshaping continents, erasing histories, and taking with it everything in its wake. It was Jormungandr's unhinging, the onset of a cataclysmic Ragnarok encased in ice and fire. In the tranquil aftermath, the ghostly whisper of the serpent's hiss echoed in Enoch's mind. Jormungandr had finally released its tail. The destruction of Ragnarok had come to pass. In the wake of the dreadful cataclysm, a hush settled on the world, the calm that follows the storm. First there was silence, the silence of rebirth. Then gradually the soft murmurs of life crept back, the restarting heartbeat in the world's chest. Ragnarok had passed, leaving in its trail a world irrevocably scarred, yet on the cusp of a new beginning. The universe had chosen to reset itself, and as he beheld the world's unmaking and the dawning of a renewed existence, Enoch could not help but be moved by the spectacle. With a spirit hardened against despair and kindled with renewed hope, he understood his purpose.